When did you realize your mother would lie about anything for attention? My mother called me in January saying she had 3 months to live. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. Already spread to her liver. I dropped everything. Flew home from Portland that night. Quit my job over email. Couldn't leave mom alone for her final months. She was crying on the couch when I arrived. Held me tight. I'm so scared, honey. I don't want to die alone. You won't, Mom. I'm here now. I'm not going anywhere. She squeezed my hand. You're such a good daughter. Not like your sister Kathleen, who hasn't even called. Kathleen lived 10 minutes away. I called her immediately. Mom's dying. 3 months. Why didn't you call? Kathleen sounded tired. What's she dying from this time? This time? She has cancer, Kathleen. Pancreatic cancer. Sure she does. Just like the brain tumor last year. And the heart failure before that. Those were scares. Misdiagnoses. This is real. She showed me the papers. Kathleen hung up. I was furious. Our mother was dying and she didn't care. Mom needed constant care. Doctor appointments, chemotherapy, radiation. Except she always scheduled them when I couldn't drive her. Had to take taxis. Never wanted me to come inside. Too depressing for you, sweetie. I'll be fine. I spent my savings making her comfortable. Organic groceries, medical supplies, massage chair for her pain, renovated her bathroom for easier access. $20,000 gone in 6 weeks. Mom seemed grateful but kept mentioning Kathleen. Your sister still hasn't visited. Can you believe it? She was always selfish. You're the only one who really loves me. I tried talking to Kathleen again. She's dying. Please come see her. Kathleen laughed. Check her medical records. What medical records? The ones from her doctor. Her oncologist. What's his name? I realized I didn't know. Mom always went alone. Said it was Dr. Roberts at the county hospital. Called the hospital. No Dr. Roberts in oncology. No doctor. Roberts at all. Must be a different hospital, Mom said. I get confused with all these appointments. But she wouldn't tell me which one. Started following her to appointments. She'd take taxis to the hospital. Go inside. I'd wait in the lobby. Never saw her check in. Never saw her go past the gift shop. She'd buy a coffee, sit for 2 hours, then leave. I confronted her. Where's your oncologist, Mom? She started crying. Why are you interrogating me? I'm dying and you're acting like a detective. Just needed to update your insurance forms. Which insurance? You know I'm covered through your father's pension. Dad's pension ended when he died 5 years ago. She changed the subject. I'm feeling so weak today. Maybe this is the end. Mom lived another month. Then another. 3 months passed. She was still dying. Still needed money. Treatment was expensive. Alternative medicine now. Holistic healing. Meditation retreats. I was broke. Credit cards maxed. Living in her house because I'd given up my apartment. That's when I called her doctor. Her actual doctor. Dr. Fisher, who'd been her physician for 20 years. Your mother is perfectly healthy. Comes in for checkups. Blood pressure medication. Nothing else. No cancer? Never had cancer. Excellent health for her age. I confronted Mom with the information. She broke down. I just wanted you to come home. You never visit. Never call. I moved away for work, Mom. You call me daily. But you don't care. Not really. Not like you'd care if I was dying. You lied about having cancer. Ruined my life. Made me quit my job. She got defensive. You needed to come home anyway. That job was too stressful. Living so far away. This was for your own good. For my own good. I'm bankrupt. Unemployed. Stuck here because of your lies. Kathleen was right about you. How dare you mention your sister? She abandoned me in my time of need. There was no time of need. You're not sick. I could have been. Then you'd feel terrible for doubting me. I moved out that night. Went to Kathleen's. She wasn't surprised. This is the 4th time. 4th? Brain tumor when I graduated college. Couldn't make it to the ceremony. Heart failure during my wedding. Left halfway through the reception. Kidney disease when I had my baby. Made the whole visit about her. And now pancreatic cancer to get you home. Why didn't you tell me? You wouldn't have believed me. Had to learn yourself. Mom started calling everyone. Telling them I'd abandoned her during cancer treatment. Heartless daughter. Left her to die alone. Took all her money first. My Aunt Barbara called me furious. How could you leave your dying mother? She's not dying, Barbara. She's lying. That's ridiculous. Why would she lie? Ask her for medical records. 1 document. Any proof. Barbara called back an hour later. She couldn't provide anything. Said you destroyed them out of spite. Of course she did. The family started taking sides. Half believed Mom. Half remembered her other illnesses that mysteriously disappeared. Mom escalated. I stayed at Kathleen's that first night in her guest room with the pale blue walls and the window that faced her neighbor's fence. The sheets smelled like laundry detergent and something floral. I lay there staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep, replaying every conversation from the past 3 months. Mom crying on the couch when I arrived, her hand squeezing mine. The way she looked at me with those wet eyes when she said she was scared. All of it fake. Every single tear, every frightened hug, every weak voice on the phone. She knew exactly what she was doing. She called me in January with a death sentence and watched me drop everything. Watched me quit my job, spend my savings, max out my credit cards. And the whole time she was just buying coffee at the hospital gift shop. I thought about the massage chair I bought her, the bathroom renovation, the organic groceries I carried up her front steps every week, $20,000, 3 months of my life, my entire career in Portland, gone because she wanted attention. Kathleen tried to warn me and I called her selfish. I actually called my sister selfish for not visiting our perfectly healthy mother. The ceiling had a water stain in the corner shaped like a comma. I stared at it for hours. The next morning, Kathleen made coffee in her bright kitchen with the yellow curtains. We sat at her table, the wooden one with the scratched surface and the wobbly leg. She pulled out a folder from her desk drawer. Inside were printed emails and text messages going back years. I recognized Mom's writing style immediately. The first email was from 8 years ago when Kathleen graduated college. Mom couldn't make it to the ceremony because of a brain tumor. Stage 3. Surgery scheduled. Kathleen showed me the follow-up messages where Mom forgot which hospital, which doctor, which type of surgery. Then another email 6 months later mentioning a cruise she took to Alaska. No mention of brain surgery recovery. Next was the heart failure incident during Kathleen's wedding. Mom left halfway through the reception, clutching her chest, saying she needed to go to the emergency room. Kathleen showed me the hospital records she requested later. No admission that night, no emergency room visit, just Mom's signature on a form saying she declined treatment and left. Then the kidney disease when Kathleen had her baby. Mom made the whole visit about her dialysis schedule that didn't exist. Kathleen had requested medical records then too. Nothing. I read through everything twice. The pattern was obvious once you saw it laid out. Mom would claim a serious illness during important life events. Get attention. Make it about her. Then the illness would quietly disappear. I had missed all of it. Explained it away. Believed her excuses. I called my former boss in Portland from Kathleen's back porch. Her name was Susan and she answered on the third ring. I explained what happened, my voice shaking, trying not to cry. Family emergency that turned out differently than expected. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said she was sorry, but they already hired my replacement. A guy named Derek who started 2 weeks ago. She said I was a good employee and she understood family situations get complicated. She promised to write me a strong reference for wherever I applied next. She meant it too, I could tell by her tone. But it didn't change the fact that my job was gone. Derek had my desk now, my projects, my position. I thanked her and hung up. Sat on Kathleen's porch steps looking at her small backyard with the wooden fence and the bird feeder. 3 months ago, I had a career, an apartment, a life. Now I had nothing. My phone started buzzing before I even went back inside. Text messages from family members. Aunt Linda said I should be ashamed. Uncle Tom asked how I could abandon Mom. Cousin Rachel sent 3 crying emojis and said she was praying for Mom's recovery. They all heard Mom's version already. Heartless daughter who left her dying mother, took her money and disappeared. I scrolled through the messages, my stomach twisting. But a few were different. My cousin Mark asked if I was okay, and said the story seemed confusing. Aunt Helen said she wanted to hear my side before making judgments. Uncle Noah just sent a question mark. Not much, but something. At least 3 people weren't ready to completely believe Mom yet. I didn't respond to any of them. Didn't know what to say. How do you defend yourself against someone who lies so well? Barbara called back 2 hours later. I was sitting in Kathleen's living room, still holding my phone, when it rang. Barbara's voice sounded different this time. Less angry, more uncertain. She said she talked to Mom again and something felt wrong about the whole thing. Mom kept changing details. First she said I destroyed the medical records. Then she said they were at the hospital. Then she said her doctor had them but wouldn't release them without her permission. Barbara asked why I would destroy records if Mom really had cancer. That was a good question. A fair question. It made me realize how ridiculous Mom's story sounded when you actually thought about it. Why would I destroy proof of the illness I supposedly abandoned her during? Barbara said she wasn't taking sides yet, but she wanted the truth. I told her to call Dr. Fisher. Gave her the number. She said she would. I spent the next hour writing a message to the family members who seemed open to listening. Kept it simple. Basic facts only. I came home because Mom said she had 3 months to live. Pancreatic cancer. I quit my job to care for her. Spent my savings on her treatment and comfort. After 3 months, I asked for medical proof. She couldn't provide any. I called her actual doctor. He confirmed she never had cancer. Never had any serious illness. Perfect health for her age. I asked for medical proof and Mom couldn't provide it. That was the whole story. No drama. No accusations. Just what happened. I sent it to Mark, Helen, and Noah. Then I put my phone face down on the coffee table. Didn't want to see the responses yet. Roger came home from work around 6. He's Kathleen's husband, quiet guy with glasses who works in IT. He saw me on the couch and gave me this awkward but real hug. The kind where you can tell someone doesn't know what to say but wants you to know they care. He said Kathleen went through hell during the kidney disease thing. Family stopped talking to her for months. Mom told everyone she refused to donate a kidney when Mom needed one. Except Mom never needed a kidney. Never had kidney disease. But the damage was done. People believed it. Treated Kathleen like she let her mother die. Roger said he was glad someone finally had her back. Glad she wasn't alone in this anymore. I started crying. Not dramatic sobbing, just quiet tears running down my face. He patted my shoulder and went to the kitchen. That evening, Mom called me 17 times between 7 and 9. I didn't answer. Let every call go to voicemail. Then I listened to them all in order. The first 3 were sobbing apologies. She was sorry. She made a mistake. She just missed me so much. Calls 4 through 7 were angry. How dare I ignore her? She raised me better than this. I was cruel and heartless. Calls 8 through 11 went back to sad. She was all alone. Nobody cared. She might as well be dead. The last 6 were guilt trips. The stress was making her actually sick now. She was having chest pains. If she had a real heart attack, it would be my fault. I saved them all. Didn't know why. Maybe as proof. Maybe just because deleting them felt like pretending they didn't happen. I spent the next day at Kathleen's computer applying for jobs online. Marketing positions mostly, since that was my background. But every application had the same problem. Employment history. Why did you leave your last position? How do you explain this without sounding insane? Family emergency sounds suspicious. Personal reasons sounds like you got fired. I tried different versions. Took time off to care for a sick relative. Left to handle a family health crisis. None of them sounded right. They all raised more questions than they answered. My savings account showed $847. I logged into my credit card accounts. All maxed. Total debt around $15,000. I used to have $23,000 in savings. Used to have good credit. Used to have a future. Now I had $800 and a gap in my resume I couldn't explain. Kathleen found me staring at the computer screen and sat down next to me. She said I should talk to her friend Miranda Vaughn, who's a therapist. She said I needed professional help working through this. I told her I was fine. She gave me this look. The kind that says you're obviously not fine. I said therapy felt like admitting I was damaged. Like admitting Mom broke something in me. Kathleen said Mom did break something and pretending otherwise wouldn't fix it. She said Miranda helped her after the kidney disease incident. Helped her understand it wasn't her fault. Helped her set boundaries. I sat there for a long time. Then I said, okay. 1 session. Just to try it. Kathleen called Miranda right then and set up an appointment for next week. Miranda's office was on the 2nd floor of a converted house downtown. I sat in the waiting room for 10 minutes, flipping through magazines without reading them. When she opened the door and called my name, I almost left. She had a kind face. That made it worse somehow. I followed her into a small room with 2 chairs and a box of tissues on the side table. She asked me to tell her what brought me in. I started with the basics. My mother faked cancer. I quit my job, spent all my savings, found out she was lying, moved out. The words came out flat, like I was recounting someone else's story. She asked how I was feeling about it. I said I was fine. Angry, but fine. She waited. The silence stretched out until I had to fill it. I'm not fine. I'm so angry I can't sleep. I keep replaying every conversation. Every time she cried. Every time I felt guilty for not doing enough. She nodded and asked what I was most angry about. The money seemed like the obvious answer. $20,000 gone. My job, my apartment, my entire life in Portland. But when I tried to say that, different words came out. She made me feel like a bad daughter for living my own life. Like I was selfish for moving away. For having a career. For not calling every single day. And I believed her. I thought I was the problem. My voice cracked on the last word. I grabbed a tissue from the box even though I wasn't crying yet. Miranda asked how long I'd felt that way. Since I moved to Portland 5 years ago. Maybe longer. Mom always made comments about how I was too busy for family. How Kathleen was close by, but I chose to be far away. Like distance meant I didn't care. The tears started then. Not dramatic sobbing, just steady tears I couldn't stop. I told her about the voicemails. The guilt trips. The way Mom would call 17 times in 2 hours and then act like I was cruel for not answering. Miranda handed me another tissue and said something that made my chest tight. You know that's not normal behavior, right? I did know. But hearing someone else say it made it real in a new way. We talked for the rest of the hour. She gave me homework. Write down every time I feel guilty and ask myself if the guilt is based on something I actually did wrong or something Mom conditioned me to feel. I left feeling worse than when I arrived. More raw, but also lighter somehow. 3 days later, I was sitting at Kathleen's kitchen table when someone knocked on the front door. Kathleen got up to answer it. I heard Mom's voice before I saw her. Please, I just want to talk to her. Kathleen blocked the doorway. You need to leave. I'm not leaving until I see my daughter. You lost that right when you lied to her for 3 months. Mom started crying. Loud, gasping sobs that sounded fake even from the kitchen. I've lost both my daughters now. You're turning her against me. Nobody turned her against you. You did that yourself. I stood up and walked to where I could see the front door but stayed back from it. Mom was on the porch, mascara running down her face, hands clasped together like she was praying. When she saw me, she reached toward me. Honey, please. I'm so sorry. We can fix this. There's nothing to fix, Mom. You lied. End of story. I didn't mean to. I was confused. The doctor said different things. I talked to your doctor. The real one. You were never sick. She switched tactics instantly. The crying stopped. Her face hardened. You always were ungrateful. Just like your father. Cold. Kathleen stepped forward. Leave now or I'm calling the police. You wouldn't dare. Try me. Mom looked at me one more time. This is your last chance. Come home and we'll forget this whole thing. I stayed silent. She turned and walked down the porch steps, shoulders shaking like she was crying again. But when she reached the sidewalk, she pulled out her phone and started typing, probably telling everyone how we'd thrown her out. Kathleen closed the door and locked it. I went back to the kitchen and sat down. My hands were shaking. The guilt was there, heavy in my chest, even though I knew she'd created this situation, even though I knew she was manipulating me. Miranda's homework made sense now. The guilt wasn't based on anything I'd actually done wrong. It was just conditioning. Years of Mom training me to feel responsible for her emotions. My phone rang 2 days later. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Is this Mom's daughter? The voice was male, unfamiliar. Yes. Who is this? This is Sebastian, your cousin. I remembered him vaguely. Mom's sister's son. We'd seen each other at family gatherings but never really talked. I heard what happened with your mom. The cancer thing. I wanted to call because something similar happened to me. I sat up straighter. What do you mean? 5 years ago, I got married. Had this whole wedding planned. Invited the whole family. Mom RSVP'd. Yes, said she was excited. Helped me pick out flowers even. Then 2 weeks before the wedding, she called. Said she was too sick to come. Some kind of heart condition. Needed to rest. I felt terrible, but understood. Then the day of my wedding, my sister told me she'd seen Mom at the grocery store that morning, looking perfectly healthy, loading up her cart with food for some church potluck. I asked Mom about it later. She said the doctors cleared her at the last minute. Miraculous recovery. But she'd already missed the wedding. I didn't push it because I didn't want family drama. But looking back, I think she was mad I didn't make her mother of the bride at the reception. I'd asked my actual mother-in-law to do a toast instead. Your mom wasn't even mother of the groom. She wasn't. But she thought she should be included anyway. Made a big deal about it during planning. When I didn't give in, suddenly she was too sick to attend. The pattern was so clear it was almost funny. Almost. Sebastian kept talking. I believe you about the cancer. I should have said something years ago when it happened to me. But I convinced myself I was reading too much into it. I'm sorry. You don't need to apologize. I'm just glad someone else sees it. We talked for another 20 minutes. He told me about other incidents. Times Mom had exaggerated illnesses or created drama to get attention. Things I'd forgotten or never noticed. By the time we hung up, I felt less crazy. Less alone. The pattern had been there all along. I just hadn't wanted to see it. The marketing firm called the next morning. I stared at my phone for 3 rings before answering. This is Jennifer from Apex Marketing. We'd like to bring you in for an interview. Thursday at 2 if that works for you. I said yes before my brain caught up. They gave me the address, told me to bring my portfolio. I hung up and immediately panicked. My portfolio was still at Mom's house. Most of my nice clothes too. I'd grabbed essentials when I moved out but left the professional wardrobe behind. Kathleen found me standing in her hallway staring at my closet options. What's wrong? I have a job interview Thursday. Everything I need is at Mom's house. She didn't hesitate. What size are you? About the same as you. Come on. She took me to her bedroom and opened her closet. Black blazer, gray dress pants, white blouse. Simple but professional. Try these on. I changed in her bathroom. The clothes fit well enough. A little loose in the waist but nothing obvious. Kathleen looked me over when I came out. You look good. Professional. I felt like a kid playing dress up. But I thanked her anyway. She found me a portfolio bag and helped me print out samples of my work from Portland. By Wednesday night, I had everything ready. Rehearsed my answers to common interview questions. Practiced my explanation for leaving my last job. But nothing I came up with sounded right. Thursday afternoon, I sat in the Apex Marketing lobby filling out paperwork. The office was smaller than my Portland company. Older building, worn carpet. But the receptionist was friendly and the space felt comfortable. Jennifer came out right at 2. She was younger than I expected. Maybe 30. It led me to a conference room where two other people waited. This is Mark, our creative director, and Susan, head of accounts. We shook hands, made small talk about the weather. Then Mark opened my portfolio. Your Portland work is impressive. Strong concepts, clean execution. Why'd you leave? I'd practiced this answer 50 times, but my mouth went dry anyway. I had a family emergency. Needed to come home to help a relative with what I thought was a serious health situation. The situation resolved differently than expected. Now I'm ready to get back to work with renewed focus. Mark nodded slowly. Susan wrote something on her notepad. What kind of health situation? I froze. The vague answer hadn't worked. They wanted details. My mother was sick. Or I thought she was. Turns out she wasn't. It's complicated. Susan looked up. Complicated how? I could feel sweat forming under Kathleen's blazer. My mother told me she had cancer. Terminal. I quit my job to take care of her. Spent 3 months and all my savings helping her. Then I found out she never actually had cancer. She lied. The room went silent. Jennifer's eyes widened. Mark put down my portfolio. Susan stopped writing. That's quite a situation. It is. I understand if that makes me seem unreliable. But I acted in good faith based on information I believed to be true. Mark and Susan exchanged glances. Some kind of silent communication I couldn't read. Jennifer cleared her throat. That must have been incredibly difficult. It was. Still is. But I'm ready to move forward. Ready to focus on work and rebuilding my career. We spent another 20 minutes discussing the position, projects I'd work on, team structure, salary expectations. But I could tell something had shifted. They were being polite, but the energy had changed. When I left, I knew I wouldn't get a call back. The truth had made me sound unstable, like someone with messy family drama who might bring that chaos to work. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before driving back to Kathleen's. Tried not to cry. Failed. Aunt Barbara called that weekend. Her voice was careful, measured. I'm organizing a family meeting. Tomorrow at 3. Just to clear the air. Get everyone's side of the story. I don't think that's a good idea. Please. The family is falling apart over this. We need to talk it through like adults. Who's going to be there? Your mom, me, your uncle, a few cousins, Kathleen if she wants to come. I looked across the room at Kathleen, who was reading on the couch. She must have sensed me watching because she looked up. I covered the phone. Family meeting at Barbara's tomorrow. Should I go? She put down her book. It's a trap. They're going to ambush you with Mom playing victim. I know. But some of them might actually listen. Might believe me. Kathleen sighed. If you're going, I'm coming with you. I uncovered the phone. Okay, we'll be there. Barbara sounded relieved. Thank you. This means a lot. I hung up and immediately regretted agreeing, but part of me still hoped some family members would hear the truth and understand. Sunday afternoon, Kathleen and I pulled up to Barbara's house. Cars already lined the street, more than I'd expected. We sat in Kathleen's car for a minute. Last chance to back out, she said. I'm here now. Might as well see it through. We walked up to the front door together. Barbara answered with a tight smile. Thank you for coming. Everyone's in the living room. The living room was packed. Mom sat in the center of the couch, tissue in hand, surrounded by her sister and 2 cousins. Uncle Tom stood by the fireplace. Aunt Helen sat in the armchair. At least 10 people total. All eyes turned to us when we entered. Kathleen was right. This was an ambush. Barbara gestured to 2 chairs they'd set up facing the couch. Like we were on trial. Please sit. We're all family here. We just want to understand what happened. I sat down. Kathleen stayed standing behind me. Mom immediately started crying. I don't understand why you're doing this to me. Accusing me of lying when I'm sick and scared. You're not sick, Mom. I talked to your doctor. She dabbed at her eyes with the tissue. You talked to one doctor. I have specialists. Multiple opinions. The diagnoses were confusing. Then show us the paperwork. Any medical record from any specialist. She looked at her sister. I can't. She destroyed them all. Stole them from my house when she moved out. That's not true. I never touched your papers. Mom's sister leaned forward. Then why can't she provide proof? Because she never had any proof to begin with. There was no cancer. Aunt Helen spoke up from the armchair. This is a serious accusation. You're saying your mother invented a terminal illness? Yes. That's exactly what I'm saying. And I can prove it. I pulled out my phone, pulled up the email from Dr. Fisher, read it out loud, the part about Mom's medical history, the confirmation of no cancer diagnosis, perfect health for her age. Mom's sister cut me off. How do we know that's real? You could have typed that yourself. I stared at her. Why would I do that? To make your mother look bad. To justify abandoning her. The absurdity of it hit me and I actually laughed. A short, sharp sound that made everyone flinch. You think I bribed a doctor to lie? Paid him to fake an email so I could what? Ruin my mother's reputation? I quit my job. Spent $20,000. Gave up my entire life in Portland. Why would I do all that just to turn around and accuse her of lying? Mom stood up, wobbling slightly like she was weak. The stress of this is making me actually sick now. My heart. The palpitations are getting worse. I could have a real heart attack from all this. I stood up too. Kathleen's hand landed on my shoulder. We're leaving. Barbara stepped forward. Please, we haven't resolved anything. There's nothing to resolve. You all made up your minds before we got here. Kathleen pulled me toward the door. Mom called after us. This is killing me. You're killing me. I didn't look back. We walked out to the car while Mom's voice carried through the open door. How could she do this to her own mother? How could she be so cruel? We sat in Kathleen's car. She didn't start it. Just let me shake. My whole body was trembling. Hands, arms, even my jaw. 20 minutes passed. The shaking slowed. Stopped. Kathleen handed me her water bottle and I drank half of it. That went exactly how I said it would. I know. Some of them wanted to believe her. Wanted me to be the bad guy because that's easier than accepting what she is. Kathleen started the car. Let's go home. On the drive back, I stared out the window. Watched familiar streets pass by. The town I grew up in felt different now. Smaller. Full of people who chose comfortable lies over uncomfortable truth. When we got back to her house, I went straight to her computer. Opened my email. Started typing. The email took an hour to write. I addressed it to the family members who'd seemed even slightly reasonable at the meeting. Uncle Tom, who'd stayed quiet. Aunt Helen, who'd at least asked questions. My cousin, who'd looked uncomfortable the whole time. I kept it factual. Listed the timeline. Mom's call in January. 3 months of care. The money spent. The discovery that she'd been lying. I attached Dr. and Fisher's letter. The official one on his practice letterhead confirming Mom's medical history. Signed and dated. I wrote that I understood this was hard to believe. That I wouldn't have believed it myself if I hadn't lived through it. But the facts were the facts. Mom had no cancer. Never had cancer. Had lied about a terminal illness to manipulate me into coming home. I wasn't asking them to take sides. Just asking them to look at the evidence objectively. To consider the pattern of behavior. The other fake illnesses Kathleen had mentioned. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I closed the laptop and went to bed even though it was only 7. The responses came in over the next 2 days. 3 people replied. My cousin apologized for not speaking up at the meeting. Said she'd believed me but didn't want to cause more drama. Uncle Tom sent a long email. Said he'd always known Mom was dramatic, but never realized it went this far. He felt guilty for believing her initial story without asking more questions. He said he'd talked to his wife and they both agreed my version made more sense given Mom's history. The third response came from someone I hadn't expected. Will, Mom's younger brother. He wrote that he remembered when Mom faked a miscarriage 30 years ago to get attention during his graduation. She'd never been pregnant but told everyone she'd lost the baby from stress. He'd pushed it out of his mind because it seemed too cruel to be true. But seeing this pattern repeat made him realize she'd been doing this their whole lives. He apologized for doubting me. Said he should have known better. I read his email 3 times. Felt something loosen in my chest. The validation helped more than I'd expected. These family members believed me. Saw the truth. It didn't fix everything, but it was something. I spent the next few days refreshing my email constantly, jumping every time my phone buzzed. The waiting felt worse than the interview itself. I knew I'd messed up the explanation about leaving Portland. The interviewer's expression when I gave that vague family emergency answer told me everything I needed to know. She'd smiled politely, but her eyes had already moved on to the next candidate. The call came on Thursday afternoon while I was helping Kathleen fold laundry. I saw the number and my stomach dropped. The woman's voice was professional and kind, which somehow made it worse. They'd decided to go with another candidate. Someone whose background was a better fit for the position. She thanked me for my time and wished me luck in my job search. I said thank you and hung up. Kathleen looked at me from across the pile of towels. I didn't get it. She nodded and kept folding. I sat there holding my phone, feeling the weight of 3 months of mistakes pressing down on me. I was qualified for that job. More qualified than I'd been for half the positions I'd held in Portland. But the gap in my resume screamed unreliable. The way I'd stumbled through my explanation screamed dishonest. No one wants to hire someone who can't give a straight answer about why they left their last job. I picked up a towel and started folding it, creasing the edges carefully because at least that was something I could do right. My phone rang again an hour later. Unknown number from Portland. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. The voice on the other end was familiar and unexpected. It was Lucy from my old marketing team. I hadn't talked to her since I'd sent that 2-sentence email quitting my job back in January. She said she'd heard through workplace gossip that I'd had some kind of family emergency. People were wondering what happened to me. I opened my mouth to give her the same vague explanation I'd been using, and instead everything came pouring out. The fake cancer diagnosis. The 3 months of care. The $20,000. My mom's refusal to provide any proof. The discovery that she'd lied about everything. I told her about the family meeting where half of them called me a liar. about being broke and unemployed and stuck in my hometown with no way forward. I expected Lucy to make polite, sympathetic noises and get off the phone as quickly as possible. Instead, she got quiet for a long moment and then said that was the most messed up thing she'd ever heard. She asked how I was holding up, and I realized I was crying. Lucy let me cry without trying to make it better or change the subject. When I finally stopped, she said she was so sorry I was going through this. That my mom sounded manipulative and cruel. That I deserved better than what my family was putting me through. The validation hit me harder than I expected. This was someone who barely knew me, who had no reason to take my side, and she believed me without question. Lucy called back the next day with a practical suggestion. Her sister worked in HR at a tech company and might have advice for handling my resume gap in future interviews. She gave me an email address and told me to mention her name. I sent the message that afternoon, explaining my situation as briefly as possible. June responded within a few hours. She said family emergencies were more common than people thought, and most interviewers would understand as long as I was honest without oversharing. She suggested a brief explanation that acknowledged the situation without going into excessive detail. Something like I took time off to help a family member with what I believed was a serious health crisis. The situation resolved differently than expected, and I'm now ready to return to work with renewed focus. It was perfect. Direct enough to sound honest, but vague enough to avoid the whole messy story. I copied the explanation into a document and read it over and over until I had it memorized. That weekend, I practiced with Kathleen. She sat across from me at her kitchen table and asked interview questions while I gave my new explanation. The first few times I stumbled over the words, my voice shaking on the phrase resolved differently than expected. By the 10th run-through, I could say it calmly, meeting her eyes without flinching. Kathleen said I sounded professional and believable. She said the key was not acting defensive or apologetic, just stating the facts and moving on to talk about my qualifications. We practiced for an hour until I felt confident I could deliver the explanation without breaking down or over-explaining. Roger came home and listened to me do it one more time. He nodded and said any reasonable interviewer would accept that answer and move on. I checked my social media that night and immediately regretted it. Mom had posted a long, vague update about betrayal and ungrateful children who abandon their family in times of need. She didn't name me directly, but anyone who knew our family would know exactly who she meant. The post had 37 comments, most from her church friends offering sympathy and prayers. A few asked what happened, and Mom responded with more vague implications about being left alone during a health crisis. My phone started buzzing with messages from people I went to high school with. Most were concerned, asking if I was okay and what was going on with my family. A few were accusatory, having clearly heard Mom's version of events. I stared at the screen feeling sick. Mom was taking her lies public now, painting me as the villain to anyone who would listen. I called Miranda and asked if I should respond to Mom's posts, set the record straight publicly. Miranda asked what I hoped to accomplish by engaging. I said I wanted people to know the truth. She asked if I thought Mom's church friends would believe me over her. If I thought a Facebook argument would make my life better or worse. I admitted it would probably make things worse. Miranda said sometimes protecting your mental health means letting other people believe whatever they want to believe. That choosing not to engage wasn't the same as giving up. It was choosing which battles were worth fighting. I deactivated my accounts that night, deleted the apps from my phone. It felt like letting Mom win, but it also felt like taking away her ability to hurt me through a screen. The people who mattered already knew my side of the story. Everyone else could think whatever they wanted. 2 weeks later, I got another interview request. A smaller marketing company with a casual website and friendly tone in their email. I used June's suggested explanation for my resume gap during the phone screening. The HR person on the other end made a sympathetic noise and said, family emergencies happen to everyone. She appreciated my honesty and wanted to schedule an in-person interview for next week. I hung up feeling cautiously hopeful for the first time in weeks. The interview itself went better than I expected. The office was smaller than my Portland company, more relaxed. The interviewer was a woman about my age who asked about my Portland experience and seemed genuinely interested in my answers. When we got to the gap in my resume, I delivered my practiced explanation calmly. She nodded and said she understood completely. Her own sister had a health scare last year that disrupted everyone's plans. She moved on to asking about my project management experience without dwelling on it. We talked for 40 minutes about marketing strategies and campaign metrics. Things I actually knew how to do. Things that had nothing to do with my mother's lies or my family's drama. They called me back for a second interview 3 days later. This time I met with the team I'd be working with. 4 people around a conference table asking questions about my approach to different marketing challenges. They seemed friendly and collaborative, joking with each other between questions. One of them had visited Portland and wanted to know about the food scene there. Another asked about specific campaigns I'd worked on and seemed impressed by my answers. No one fixated on why I left or acted suspicious about my explanation. They just wanted to know if I could do the job. By the end of the hour, I actually felt good about my chances. These were people I could see myself working with, a company that seemed stable and reasonable. The job offer came through email on a Monday morning. Start date in 3 weeks. Salary about 70% of what I'd made in Portland, but enough to start rebuilding my savings. Benefits that kicked in after 90 days. A title that matched my experience level. I read the email 3 times to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding. Then I called them back to accept before they could change their minds. After I hung up, I sat on Kathleen's couch and cried. Not sad crying, but relief so intense it felt physical. This was the first step toward having a normal life again. Toward being independent and stable instead of broke and stuck. Toward proving that Mom's manipulation hadn't destroyed everything. Kathleen insisted on taking me out to celebrate that night. We went to an Italian restaurant downtown. Nothing fancy, but nicer than anywhere I'd eaten in months. She ordered wine and made a toast to new beginnings. Over pasta, she told me she was proud of how I was handling everything. She said it took her years to stop feeling guilty about setting boundaries with Mom. Years of therapy and failed attempts at reconciliation before she finally accepted that some relationships couldn't be fixed. I was doing it in months, what took her nearly a decade. I said I didn't feel like I was handling anything well. I felt like I was barely surviving. Kathleen shook her head and said surviving was handling it. That I'd lost my job, my savings, and my family support, but I was still here. Still applying for jobs, still rebuilding. That was strength even if it didn't feel like it. We finished dinner and drove home through familiar streets that felt slightly less hostile than they had a few weeks ago. I had a job starting in 3 weeks. It wasn't everything I'd lost, but it was something. It was enough to keep moving forward. I needed to get my stuff from Mom's house, but the thought of facing her alone made my stomach hurt. Roger offered to come with me as a buffer, and we picked a Wednesday afternoon when Mom usually went to her book club. We drove over in his truck with empty boxes in the back. My hands shook the whole way there. Mom's car was in the driveway when we pulled up. She wasn't supposed to be home. Roger parked on the street and turned off the engine. We sat there for a minute while I tried to steady my breathing. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded even though I wasn't. We walked up to the front door and I used my key. Mom was sitting on the couch watching television. She looked up when we came in and her face crumpled immediately. "You're here to steal from me. After everything I've done for you." Roger stayed calm and quiet next to me. "We're just here to get her belongings, her laptop and clothes. We're not here to argue." Mom stood up and followed us down the hall to my old bedroom. I started packing quickly, throwing clothes into boxes without folding them. Mom stood in the doorway talking, and I could have been spending these months enjoying my life, going on trips, seeing friends. Instead, I've been suffering through your horrible accusations. She kept talking while I packed. "Do you know what it's like to have your own daughter call you a liar? To have everyone in the family questioning you?" I grabbed my laptop off the desk and wrapped the cord around it. The massage chair I bought her was visible through the bathroom door. $20,000 for her comfort while she lied to my face. I could have been happy. Mom's voice got louder. "But instead, I had to deal with your paranoia and your sister's poison in your ear." Roger moved closer to the doorway, not blocking Mom but making his presence known. The absurdity of her rewriting history would have been funny if I wasn't so angry. She was the victim now. She was the one who suffered. I packed my winter coats and the framed photos from my dresser. Mom followed me back and forth between the bedroom and the front door where we were stacking boxes. She talked the entire time about how she could have been traveling or volunteering or doing anything else with these months. As if she hadn't orchestrated the whole thing. As if I had forced her to fake cancer. We loaded the last box into Roger's truck. I turned to go back inside for one more check and Mom grabbed my arm. Her fingers dug into my skin. "Just admit you were wrong. That's all I need. Just say you were wrong about me and we can move past this." I pulled my arm away. "I can't admit to something that isn't true." Her face changed instantly. The sad, pleading expression vanished and anger took its place. "You're a spiteful liar. You're destroying this family. You always were selfish, just like your sister." Roger touched my shoulder and guided me toward the truck. Mom stood on her front steps yelling as we drove away. I could still hear her voice in my head hours later. Back at Kathleen's house, I unpacked the boxes in the guest room. My clothes looked strange, mixed in with the temporary furniture. I realized how much I'd left behind at Mom's house over the years. My high school yearbooks, photo albums from college, a jewelry box my dad gave me before he died. All of it still sitting in that house feeling contaminated by her manipulation. I didn't want to go back for any of it. Some things weren't worth the cost of retrieving them. Kathleen helped me hang clothes in the closet. She didn't ask how it went with Mom because she already knew. We'd both lived through enough of these scenes to know exactly how they played out. My first day at the new job was a Monday in late spring. The office was smaller than my Portland workplace, but cleaner and more organized. My supervisor showed me to my desk and introduced me to the team. 4 people who smiled and welcomed me without asking invasive questions. Nobody wanted to know why I left my last job or what brought me back to town. They just wanted to know if I needed help setting up my computer. I spent 8 hours working on actual marketing tasks instead of thinking about my mother. It felt like breathing after being underwater. The work was straightforward and the people were normal. Drama-free. I ate lunch in the break room with 2 coworkers who talked about a television show I'd never watched. It was boring and wonderful. 2 weeks into the job, I started looking at apartments online during my lunch breaks. Kathleen kept saying I could stay as long as I needed, but I wanted my own space again. The independence I'd given up when I moved home to take care of Mom. I filtered searches by my reduced budget, looking at studios and one-bedrooms in safe neighborhoods. Most were too expensive or too far from work. I scheduled viewings for 3 different places over the weekend. The first apartment was dark and smelled like cigarettes. The second had a broken window the landlord promised to fix eventually. The third was a small studio on the second floor of an older building. Not fancy, but clean with good light from 2 windows. The landlord was a woman in her 60s who asked basic questions about employment and references. The rent was manageable if I stayed strict with my budget. No eating out, no unnecessary purchases, every dollar toward rebuilding my savings. I filled out the application that night and got approved 3 days later. The lease started the 1st of next month. I felt something like hope for the first time in months. This was proof I could actually recover from the disaster Mom created. I could build a life again. My phone rang from a number I didn't recognize on a Thursday morning. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. The call went to voicemail while I stared at the screen. I listened to the message during my break. Mom's voice, shaky and scared. I'm in the hospital. Heart palpitations. The stress of everything has made me actually sick now. I'm alone here and I'm frightened. I texted Kathleen asking if she'd heard from Mom. She called me back 5 minutes later. She's not in any hospital. I already checked. Called every emergency room within 20 miles. Nobody admitted with her name. The fake hospital visit was almost funny in how predictable it was. Mom cycling back to health problems when emotional manipulation didn't work. When guilt and anger couldn't bring me back, she invented a new medical crisis. I didn't respond to her voicemail. I blocked the new number she'd called from. I felt tired more than angry. Tired of the pattern. Tired of wondering if this time might be real. Tired of being the person who had to verify whether my own mother was telling the truth about being in the hospital. I went back to work and focused on the marketing campaign I was developing. My coworker asked if I wanted to grab coffee after work, and I said yes, because normal friendly interactions with people who didn't lie felt valuable now. The coffee shop conversation felt normal in a way I'd forgotten existed. My coworker talked about her weekend plans and asked if I wanted to join her book club. I said yes without thinking about it. Having plans that didn't involve Mom or family drama or financial recovery felt like stepping into someone else's life. November arrived with cold rain and shorter days. I'd been at the job for almost 2 months when Aunt Barbara called. She asked if I was free for Thanksgiving dinner at her house this year. Mom wouldn't be there. Barbara had finally confronted her about the fake cancer and the lies. She couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. I held the phone against my ear, feeling something shift in my chest. Barbara choosing truth over keeping peace meant more than I expected. I told her I'd come and thanked her for believing me. She said she should have listened sooner instead of assuming I was the problem. Thanksgiving morning, I drove to Barbara's house with Kathleen. We brought sweet potato casserole and pumpkin pie from the grocery store bakery. The house smelled like turkey and stuffing when we walked in. Barbara hugged us both at the door. Several cousins were already there, along with Uncle Will and his wife. The atmosphere felt cautious but warm. People weren't sure how to act around me after everything that happened. Dinner started with awkward small talk about work and weather. Then Uncle Will cleared his throat and said he owed me an apology. He'd believed Mom's story without questioning it because that was easier than admitting she'd been manipulating the family for years. Acknowledging her lies meant rethinking decades of family dynamics and accepting that he'd enabled her behavior. My cousin Sebastian agreed and said he was sorry for not backing me up sooner. One by one, several family members apologized for taking Mom's side initially. They said they wanted to believe her because the alternative was too uncomfortable to face. I told them I understood. I'd believed her too. Spent 3 months and $20,000 believing her. The difference was, I'd finally asked for proof instead of just accepting her word. Barbara refilled wine glasses and changed the subject to something lighter. We ate pie and talked about normal things. It felt strange having family support after months of being treated like the villain. After dinner, Kathleen and I did dishes together in Barbara's kitchen. She scrubbed a roasting pan while I dried plates. She said this was the first holiday in 8 years where she hadn't felt like the family scapegoat. Usually she spent Thanksgiving defending herself against Mom's version of events, while everyone else looked uncomfortable. Having people actually believe her and support both of us felt unreal. I set down a plate and hugged her. We both got teary standing there by the sink. Roger walked in to grab more coffee and quietly backed out when he saw us crying. The first week of December, I signed the lease on my studio apartment and got the keys. Moving day was just me and Kathleen loading boxes from her guest room into my car. The apartment was empty and echoed when we walked in. I'd furnished it slowly over the past few weeks with finds from thrift stores and discount furniture places. A bed frame from someone's garage sale. A small couch that had seen better days but was clean and comfortable. Kitchen supplies from the dollar store. Nothing matched, but it was mine. Paid for with money I earned myself instead of borrowed or saved before Mom destroyed everything. Work continued going well. My boss pulled me aside one afternoon to say I was doing excellent work. If I kept performing at this level, there might be potential for advancement in the next year. It wasn't the career path I'd had in Portland. That job was gone along with the professional reputation I'd been building. But this was stable and the company culture was healthy. People were professional and kind. Nobody created drama or lied about dying to get attention. The bar for normal had gotten pretty low, but I'd take it. A Christmas card arrived in my mailbox the third week of December. Mom's handwriting on the envelope. She'd somehow found my new address even though I hadn't given it to her. The card had generic text about family being forever and the importance of forgiveness. No acknowledgement of what she'd actually done. No apology for the fake cancer or the money or destroying my career. Just empty words about moving forward and letting go of the past. I stood in my tiny kitchen holding the card and feeling nothing but tired frustration. I threw the card in the trash without responding. At my next therapy session, I told Miranda about it. She said not responding was a healthy boundary. She asked how I was feeling about everything now that several months had passed. I thought about it and realized the constant anger had faded into something more like sad acceptance. Mom was who she was. She'd probably never admit what she did or apologize sincerely. I could either keep trying to get acknowledgement that would never come, or I could move forward with my own life. Miranda nodded and said that sounded like real progress. Lucy came to visit over the holidays since she had time off from work in Portland. We met for coffee at a place downtown. She looked the same as always, and it felt good seeing a friendly face from my old life. She said people at the company still talked about how much they missed my work. I'd been good at my job, and they hadn't found someone who matched my skills yet. It was nice to hear, but I was surprised to realize I didn't miss that job as much as I expected. Portland felt like a different lifetime. Someone else's life that I'd borrowed for a while before everything fell apart. New Year's Eve. I spent quietly at my apartment. No parties or celebrations. Just me and a bottle of cheap wine and old movies on television. I sat on my secondhand couch thinking about how I'd started this year believing my mother was dying. Spent months caring for her and spending everything I had to make her comfortable. Then ended the year realizing she was never the person I thought she was. It was a strange kind of grief. Mourning someone who was still alive but who'd never actually existed as the person I believed her to be. The mother I thought I had was a fiction. The real version was manipulative and selfish and willing to destroy her daughter's life for attention. January arrived cold and gray. 1 year since Mom called saying she had 3 months to live. 1 year since I dropped everything and flew home to be with her. I was doing better than I would have predicted back then. I had a job that paid the bills, a small apartment that was mine, a savings account that was slowly growing again. Family relationships based on honesty instead of obligation. Kathleen and I talked regularly. Barbara checked in every few weeks. Uncle Will sent occasional texts asking how I was doing. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was real and solid and built on truth instead of lies. Kathleen called on a Tuesday evening while I was making dinner. She sounded somewhere between amused and exhausted. Mom's telling everyone she has Alzheimer's now, early stage, which apparently explains why she was so confused about the cancer thing. I laughed out loud at the predictability of it. Of course she is. Kathleen said she'd heard it from 3 different people in 2 days, all concerned about poor Mom's declining mental state. I asked if anyone was questioning why her Alzheimer's conveniently appeared right after getting caught in a massive lie. Kathleen said the people who want to believe her will believe anything, and she's done trying to correct the narrative for them. Let them think what they want. We talked for another 20 minutes about nothing related to Mom, which felt surprisingly normal and good. After we hung up, I realized this was the first time in months a conversation with family hadn't left me feeling angry or defensive. Work continued steadily through February and into March. I kept my head down and focused on producing good results. My boss noticed. She called me into her office on a Thursday afternoon, and I had a brief moment of panic that I'd done something wrong. Instead, she told me they were promoting me to senior associate with a modest raise. She said I was reliable and creative with problem solving, exactly what they needed on the team. It wasn't much money, maybe an extra $300 a month, but it felt like redemption after spending months feeling like the biggest fool alive. I thanked her and managed to keep my composure until I got back to my desk. Then I had to go to the bathroom and cry a little because someone valued my work and saw me as competent. It was such a small thing, but it mattered more than I expected. Miranda brought up reducing therapy sessions during our next appointment. She said I'd developed healthy coping strategies and was managing well. We could try monthly sessions instead of weekly if I felt ready. I told her I was proud of the progress even though part of me resented needing therapy because of Mom's choices. Miranda said that was a completely normal feeling and didn't diminish the work I'd done. We agreed to try monthly sessions starting in April and see how it went. I left feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Someone from work invited me to a group dinner in late March. I almost said no out of habit but forced myself to go. There were 8 of us at a casual restaurant downtown. One guy named Noah sat next to me and we ended up talking most of the night about hiking trails and terrible movies we secretly loved. He asked for my number at the end of dinner. I gave it to him. He texted 2 days later asking if I wanted to get coffee. I said yes. We met on Saturday afternoon at a place near my apartment. The conversation came easily. He asked about my family, and I gave vague answers about it being complicated. He didn't push for details. We saw each other again the following weekend, and then the weekend after that. I was taking it slow because trust didn't come easily anymore. But he seemed patient with my caution, and I appreciated not having to explain the whole messy situation right away. Spring arrived with warmer weather and longer days. I was walking home from work one evening in early April when I realized I'd made it through the hardest year of my life without completely falling apart. I still had moments of anger about the time I lost and grief about the money I'd never get back. But mostly I felt relieved to finally understand the truth about my mother. The fantasy version I'd believed in for 30 years was gone. The real version was manipulative and willing to destroy her daughter's life for attention. It hurt less than I expected. Maybe because the fantasy mom had never actually existed in the first place. Aunt Barbara called to invite me to Easter dinner at her house. She said Mom would be there too, and maybe we could reach some kind of peace. I told her I appreciated the invitation, but I wasn't interested in performing reconciliation for family comfort. Barbara was quiet for a moment. Then she said she understood and respected my decision. No guilt trips, no pressure, just acceptance. I thanked her and we talked about other things for a while before hanging up. It felt good to set a boundary and have it respected without drama. Noah and I kept seeing each other through April. Things developed naturally without pressure. We'd been dating about 6 weeks when he asked more directly about my family situation. I took a breath and told him the whole story. The fake cancer, the money, quitting my job, moving home, finding out it was all lies. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said that was one of the most messed up things he'd ever heard. He said it explained why I was so careful about trusting people. That made me feel seen rather than damaged. We talked for another hour about families and boundaries and how some relationships can't be fixed. He shared some of his own family complications. It felt like we were building something real based on honesty. I checked my credit score in late April and saw it had climbed back to good standing. My savings account crossed $5,000 the same week. These concrete markers of recovery felt more meaningful than any emotional breakthrough. Numbers didn't lie. I could see the progress in black and white. I was rebuilding what Mom had destroyed. Slowly, but steadily. Kathleen texted me about taking a weekend trip together. We picked a date in early May and drove 3 hours to a state park with good hiking trails. We spent 2 days walking through woods and eating at small-town diners and talking about everything except our mother. It was the first vacation either of us had taken in years. We were building a sister relationship based on mutual support rather than shared trauma. That felt healthy and hopeful in ways I hadn't expected. June emailed asking if I wanted help updating my resume. She said now that I had the promotion and increased responsibilities, I was qualified for better opportunities if I wanted them. We spent an evening on video chat going through my work history and accomplishments. Looking at the updated resume, I realized I had options again. Real options. I wasn't sure if I'd stay in this town long term, but I was grateful to have choices. That felt like freedom. Mom's letter arrived on a Tuesday in May. The envelope had her handwriting on the front, and my apartment address written in the shaky letters she used when she wanted to seem frail. I opened it standing by my mailbox. The letter said she'd been diagnosed with early-stage lung cancer and wanted to make things right before it was too late. She said she understood why I was angry, but hoped we could talk. She said she loved me and missed me. I read it twice standing there in the hallway. Felt nothing except tired. The same tired I'd felt when she claimed heart palpitations back in March. I folded the letter and put it in my desk drawer at home without responding. Part of me wondered if this time was real, but the bigger part didn't care anymore. Real or fake, I wasn't going back to that cycle. I'd spent too much time rebuilding to let her pull me under again. Noah wanted to meet Kathleen and Roger properly since we'd been dating for almost 3 months. I suggested dinner at a restaurant downtown where they had good pasta. We met on a Saturday evening, and I watched Noah shake Roger's hand and compliment Kathleen's jacket. The conversation started awkward but smoothed out when Noah asked about their favorite hiking trails. Roger got excited talking about a route near the state park, and Noah mentioned he'd been wanting to try it. Kathleen asked Noah about his work, and he explained his job managing inventory systems without making it sound boring. I relaxed watching them get along. Nobody mentioned my mother until dessert when Kathleen made a joke about family drama, and Noah nodded like he understood. After we said goodbye in the parking lot, Kathleen texted me before I even got to my car saying she approved, and Noah seemed solid. Having her support meant more than I expected. She was the only person who really understood what I'd survived with Mom. The only one who knew how deep that manipulation went. A recruiter contacted me through email in early June about a position at a larger marketing company across town. The pay was almost double what I currently made. The job description matched my skills better than my current role. I almost deleted the email thinking I wasn't qualified, but Lucy's voice in my head told me to at least interview. I sent my resume and got called for a phone screen the next day. The phone interview led to an in-person meeting with the department head. She asked smart questions about campaign strategy and seemed impressed with my Portland work. She offered me the position at the end of our second meeting. I sat in my car afterward feeling strange. This job was better than the one I'd quit to take care of Mom. I never would have found it if I hadn't been forced to rebuild my career from nothing. I accepted the offer and gave 2 weeks' notice at my current job. My boss said she was sad to lose me, but understood. I felt like I was finally moving forward instead of just recovering from damage. 2 years passed since that January phone call about pancreatic cancer. I lived in a bigger apartment now with furniture I'd picked out myself. Noah and I had been together long enough that we talked about moving in together next year. My career was advancing faster than it had in Portland. I maintained boundaries with family members who respected them and didn't talk to the ones who didn't. Aunt Barbara invited me to things and never pushed when I said no to events where Mom would be. Uncle Will checked in every few months. I still felt angry sometimes about what my mother stole from me. The lost money and lost time and lost trust. But mostly I felt grateful I learned the truth when I did. I'd built a life based on reality instead of her manipulation. Kathleen and I talked every week, supporting each other through the ongoing family dynamics. Mom still told people various versions of her victim story. Still claimed mysterious illnesses when she needed attention. Still blamed me and Kathleen for abandoning her. I'd accepted that she would never acknowledge what she did. Never apologize or take responsibility. Some relationships couldn't be fixed, and that was okay. I had people in my life now who valued honesty over comfortable lies. People who showed up without needing a crisis to justify it. That was enough.